Welcome to Innovate, Disrupt, or Die, the podcast where innovation isn't just an ideal, it's a way of life. I'm your host and creator of the Innovate, Disrupt, or Die newsletter, Danny Nathan. Hi there, folks. Welcome back to Innovate, Disrupt, or Die, the podcast. This episode, I have Jerry Grunwald joining me. Jerry, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. I know that there's a lot of exciting information to unpack here. Jerry, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, how it relates to the world of innovation, and, why you're interested in talking to me.
Sure. I'm a chemist by training, and I've spent 36 years in the chemicals industry, material science industry, kind of 50-50 between R&D. We're doing product and process development, obviously implementing and developing new technology. I spent a lot of time with portfolio development where, you focus on how much effort you spend improving the existing versus developing the next big things.
Ooh,
So
nice.
very much enjoyed that space and still actively interested in that space. Then the other half of my career has been in operations, in manufacturing, plant leadership, supply chain, leading large capital projects, and perhaps most relevant to today's discussion, leading an effort around transformation, kind of the digital plan of the future, Industry 4.0, the various terms for it for our company. Of those 36 years, pretty much in the same business, but I worked for two different companies because there was a sale in the middle there. So I
Okay.
started with DuPont and spent 15 great years with that company. And then in 2004, DuPont sold our business to Koch Industries. So I spent the last 21 years in these similar roles in the very fascinating work culture business environment of Koch Industries, where our company was called Invista, and we were one of the operating companies, or are one of the operating companies within the much broader Koch company.
Jerry, just so that I make sure I clarify for both myself and our listeners, when you say Coke, we're not talking about Coca-Cola, correct?
No, we're talking about Charles Koch and his brother David, who passed a number of years ago. But Charles has been CEO of Koch Industries since 1967. So
Wow.
talk about long-term consistency and constancy of purpose. And it's a large manufacturing conglomerate, have oil and gas, have paper. Georgia Pacific is a Koch company.
Okay.
Had an electronics company, a glass company, an engineering company. So very diverse set of operating businesses. We were one of them. And I should highlight, I just retired last month. So
Congratulations.
excited to see the next phase, but hopefully stay engaged in technology.
Great intro, Jerry. Thank you. So you have a background as a chemist
Mhm.
and obviously a lot of experience in team leadership and team building around R&D and innovation and sort of helping companies or helping Coke and Invista figure out what comes next. How did you sort of navigate that movement from, I'm assuming, as sort of a contributing chemist and doing research into the world of R&D and managing people and sort of thinking more broadly about transformation and some of the other things that you've described?
I mean, it's obviously a journey as any career is. So obviously, I trained as a chemist, got my PhD at University of Florida in inorganic chemistry, catalysis, which was very applicable in industrial research. So I was a bench researcher for 3 years, working on improving existing products and looking at whole new chemistries. But I was actually in R&D in one of the operating businesses, which was at that time the nylon business.
Oh,
And what I actually kind of, there's positives and trade-offs at, whether you're in central R&D or whether you're in R&D within an operating business. I was at a plant in Orange, Texas, but yet it absolutely was a, R&D, basic R&D development lab. Once a week or a couple times a month, somebody would come in from the plant and say, hey, I hear you're a chemist, we got this problem and, can you help us fix that? So you had that nice balance of doing kind of longer range work, but then having some opportunity to participate in, very current crisis of the day type work and apply, kind of fundamental science to that. So that got me interested in, there's this exciting world of R&D, but there's also this exciting world of operations and, run what we know how to do today, but, run it better and constantly improve it. So after 3 years in R&D, I got a chance to go out to leadership in kind of technical leadership in the plant in what was supposed to be a 2-year assignment. And it took me 18 years to get back to R&D again. so so I had a whole variety of leadership roles.
So, Jerry, how did you all balance the sort of research of the day, as you put it, versus the longer term R&D? And to the extent that you can talk about it, what sort of dictated the longer range R&D or innovation efforts that you all were pursuing in terms of both the smaller plant based organization and then, of course, the broader DuPont organization as well?
There's a lot of journal articles around what's the right balance between that base uh, incremental. Some people call it Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, where Horizon 3 would be the really long term
Yep.
new products and new markets type stuff. And so it is constantly you're looking at that trade off. How to get better at what you're doing today, where and you can't be doing that in a vacuum either. What's where the market's going, what's the customer asking for, what's the customer not asking for but maybe is possible, and so you can then develop the next big thing that customers don't even know they need yet, but once they see it they love it. So it's a very dynamic ongoing effort to what some people call portfolio development.
What type of involvement did the customer have in the efforts that you were pursuing? Did you actively go out and talk to customers to understand what their needs were and to sort of gauge the what do we know we need versus what do we not know we need, but where you
Right,
might be
right.
impressed by?
Absolutely, and one of the challenges we had, in at least in my early career, is we were definitely B2B, and so our product was then going to get used by a downstream plant or a downstream business of ours, but still very much
Okay.
doing chemical transformation, and then eventually you get to maybe it's the automotive business, maybe it's the fiber business where it could be apparel, or it could be industrial fiber. And so depending on where you are in that chain, you're always talking to a customer. I used to always remind folks of that. They say, well, we're not customer focused. It was like, well, somebody's buying what we make. So they
Right.
are the customer, whether they're on the retail end of things or whether they're just another business. But it's still, they still are a customer. But it is a little bit more exciting at times when you have a chance to talk to a tier one automotive producer, or if you're talking to a fabric house, or today's world a Lululemon or an Adidas or somebody like that, because it is the types of questions you get, and what they're looking at emerging is different than when you're talking to just a downstream chemical plant that's the next stage of a 5-step process.
Right. Right. So, Jerry, I'm asking this honestly out of personal curiosity, but when you all are creating, let's call it new fabrics for, for athletic wear, for
Hmm.
example,
Hmm.
are you going to an Adidas or a Lululemon and saying, hey, we created this new fabric. How might you like to use it? Or are they coming to you and saying, we need a fabric that is 30% stretchier and 20% more breathable, for example?
So it's a little bit of both. Actually, and we absolutely have had those cases where we're talking to the brand, but in many cases where we sit in the value chain, they're our customer's customer, or even our customer's customer's customer.
Uh-huh.
But you still want to talk to the brand, because they'll say, I want a soft feel, maybe
Yeah.
to a fabric. And we're engineering a polymer that's going to become a fiber, and we're thinking in terms of chemistry. So I call it the translation function. You have
Yeah.
to say, okay, they're talking about something that feels soft, but what does that mean to me in making the fiber? What can I measure? What can I change? What can I develop that will impart, an ultimate feeling of softness? So there's a lot of science in that. There's a lot of art in that, and communication, serendipity at times, but it's what keeps it interesting.
How is innovation defined at Invista or Coke?
Hmm.
And kind of paired with that, as you were going through these R&D cycles and thinking about what you could provide to, the downstream suppliers in the chain, how much was innovation a conversation point versus, I don't know, an outcome or just sort of a byproduct of the work that you were doing?
Okay.
How actively were you thinking about innovation? I guess is
Sure.
kind of the
Okay.
question that I'm
Yeah.
getting at.
Yeah. It's in many cases the difference between academic research and industrial research. In
Hmm.
academic research, a lot of times you are seeking inventions, something that hasn't been done before that contributes to new science. You can write a paper about it, maybe get a patent about it. Where innovation is more, it is the customer focus. Can you make money at it? Yeah, there's,
Right.
in industrial research, there is always that sense of what is a customer going to value,
Right.
and and how can we as a company ultimately create a saleable product that is profitable and makes money. So innovation then has that sense of it. It has a business value to it, and there's somebody who's going to pay for it,
Right.
and hopefully want to buy more of it, as opposed to just an invention which is interesting but doesn't necessarily create a business behind it. So from an industrial research, it is always on focusing on the innovation piece of that, because that's where hopefully it's going to turn into a profitable entity. Now, of course,
Right.
not all of them do. You gotta
Right.
actually only a relatively small percentage of them do. So you gotta recognize that early, and a lot of times you can do good science, but either the world's not ready for it, or there's something downstream that's not ready, and it's time to move on and go to the next innovation. To hopefully generate some good business that'll grow in the future.
Got it. So, just to put a finer point on that, then, Jerry, you're differentiate invention from innovation through the lens of what has sort of business potential behind it versus academic or discovery kind of potential.
Correct, correct, correct. Both
Gotcha.
are important,
Oh, of
but
course.
from an industrial standpoint, if you don't have that business value, then you're probably not going to be around for long.
Right, right. And you mentioned a moment ago, Jerry, that there's always that sort of question around discovery of we're working on this thing. Does it have that business potential? Can you
Hmm.
talk to me more about how did you determine what had business value and what didn't? Did you have certain KPIs that you were looking at to
Sure, sure.
understand that,
Yep, yep.
or you know
Yeah.
questions from providers? Like, how did that happen?
Absolutely, yeah, and there's many different frameworks that people use. I noticed one of your recent publications, podcast, was around that desirability, viability, and feasibility.
Exactly. So it's interesting you bring that up. So one of the things that we offer to Innovate, Disrupt, or Die subscribers is an AI GPT that is focused on assessing new ventures. And the 5 dimensions that we help you assess those new ventures on are desirability, feasibility, viability, suitability, and capability.
Hmm.
Does somebody want it? Can we make it? Is there a business around it? Suitability would be, does it make sense for us to do? And then capability is, and can we actually do it?
There you go. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I used to simplify it as just the three whys. Why do it? Which gets to that whole desirability and maybe even feasibility, and then why us?
Yep.
Why is it a good fit for our capability, our skills, and then why now? Because that's the other thing, both in operations and in R&D, that you had the right answer at the wrong time.
Jerry, you hinted at this kind of during your intro, but I want to dig into it a little bit more deeply. What is what is the relevance of technology when you're dealing with a more scientific endeavor, and how does that play a role in the innovation efforts that you were guiding?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's constantly changing and seemingly ever faster. When I started, you'd work with the commercial folks, and you'd be talking about a 5-year plan, and now things change so quickly, and not just in kind of hard science or chemistry, but in all of the engineering systems. You better keep that fresh,
Yes.
every 3 to 6 months, because a lot of times what you would hear from the commercial folks is they would say, well, we're not worried about that now. Don't spend money on that.
I can envision a world where when I say to you, what role does technology play, that there's an entirely sort of different underlying meaning behind that idea of technology that leans more into the science and the manufacturing capabilities and things that I envision being on longer term roadmaps.
One of the things that's really important in manufacturing is recognize what kind of time frame you're talking about. Like if you're going to build a plant, a large chemical plant, you really need that to be relevant for 20, 25, 30
Right.
years, because it's a very, very large investment.
Let's shift gears for a moment. Talk to me a bit about your perspective on structuring teams and organizations in a way that helps support and enable innovation and forward thinkingness, for lack of better terms.
Back in 2017, I think it was. So Charles Koch, our overall leader of Koch Industries, was really kind of pushing the operating company, saying, "You guys aren't moving fast enough." And his line was, if we don't do this, and what he was talking about was digital transformation. He says we'll end up in the dumpster, and that really gave a real sense of focus to all of the operating companies to say, hey, we got to get our hands around what this is all about and this whole industry 4.0 digital plan of the future. And so the focus, initially is all on technology, on data. Data is the new oil, and that's all the focus, which absolutely is true. And so, data, technology, that's the why of why we're going to look at this, why we're going to dedicate resources to it, why it becomes something we got to do. But it absolutely has to be the people and the work processes to how you're going to do it. So,
Right.
data is the why, people are the how, and it's really got to start with this whole concept of all of your people at all levels of the organization got to be lifelong learners. They got to have that contribution mindset. They got to change the work itself using the new technology, and that's how you're hopefully going to make some progress and transform your operations or whatever your business venture is.
Sounds like Mr. Cook's kind of edict then in 2017 also had the benefit of giving permission.
Sometimes I would go to conferences or just talk to other people at other companies that were in a role similar to mine, and they would say, gee, we just don't have senior leadership support. And I said, well, that's not my problem. I absolutely have
Yeah.
senior leadership support. And my line is a lot of people would talk about, well, is this is all about change management, and that's true. It is
Hmm.
about change management. But sometimes the key to change management is to change management. Because you'll have people in the organization that'll say, well, hey, I learned this job. It took me 5 years to learn this job. What do you mean we can train somebody in 2 months? They got that role because they were the best operator or they were the best mechanic.
Right.
And in today's environment, with this whole digital capability, the role of that supervisor is not the best mechanic. The role of supervisor is a coach. It's somebody who can enable their team to learn and grow.
Jerry, a lot of what you're hinting at falls sort of in the realm of what I tend to refer to as a culture of innovation.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it sounds like, you had the edict from the top down, which obviously creates permission and white space for exploration and for people to understand the importance of that type of culture of innovation or the always learning mentality. How did you ensure then that that trickled down to the plant manager or the guy who's running a
Sure,
team of
sure.
5 people so that, when your CEO says, go work faster, be innovative, try new things and experiment, that those people understand what the impact of that edict is on their day to day.
Sure, sure. Well, it really helped me in my role was the corporate culture around being a learning organization, and really this idea of a contribution mindset. Everybody in your organization is looking for new ways that they can improve themselves and improve their work. I mean, what is possible now in the way that you can utilize people, they can develop themselves, they can get excited about their work. And sometimes that means they leave because they've developed skills that are they can develop, and make more money somewhere else, or start a
Sure.
business. Well, that's great. To me, that's what success looks like. I don't mind attrition if they went on to bigger and better things. What
Right.
you don't want to lose somebody that says, "Well, I had all these ideas and nobody would let me apply them, so I went somewhere else." That's a loss.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Jerry. If somebody came to you and said, I have this great idea, I want to do X differently so that we can achieve Y better, faster, or because we never have before,
Right.
um, how did that play out? And how did you ensure that people felt like they had permission to kind of come forward with those
Right,
thoughts?
right. And, first of all, you start with the expectation that that's what good looks like. That's what you want. And from your supervisors, your team leaders, that becomes their job. Your job is not to tell people what to do. Your job is to in enable them to grow and create a culture where they ask those kinds of questions. Hey, I've
Hmm.
got this idea. You want to have a pretty good framework where somebody says, hey, this is the way I'm observing the issue. You want to be open to input and challenge from others, and then collectively, can we determine, could we implement your idea? Do we need to make a change? Do we need to install something different? And then it's, it's a good economic analysis associated with that. I mean, hey, you got a good idea. You could save us 1,000, but it'll cost us 1 million to implement it. Well, then that's
Sure.
probably not something we would do. But I have, can think of numerous examples where that equation's the other way around. And
Hmm.
hey, we spent $5,000 and now we've generated $1 million of value from that. And lots of examples of that. I mean, I think what good looks like is you're getting lots of those types of ideas and thoughts brought up, and then, hopefully, a reasonable percentage of those actually turn into reality. And boy, that, you talk about something that motivates an organization when people can say, hey, that was my idea that we installed
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
boy,
That
that's
personal
sense.
investment
You
aspect.
got it, you got it. Yeah.
Jerry, kind of along with that, when somebody has an idea like that, how do you ensure that they have the space to explore it and to expand
Okay.
upon it? And a lot of people when we talk innovation look at it and go, "Well, yeah, that's great, but I got a job to get done."
You got it. You
How
got
do
it.
you how do you expand beyond that, and how do you ensure that people not only have the permission but then also have the opportunity?
Absolutely. Great question too, because you talk to, the plants and the people, and they say, well, hey, I'm excited about that. I can see where that's valuable, but I'm really too busy. I got these
Right.
3 things I'm working on. You've come with these other 4. I'm having a hard time doing the 3 I got. I can't do 4 more. And what you have to do is change that whole conversation, because I'm not presenting you with 4 more things to do. I'm presenting you with a framework that will make the 3 things that you're currently trying to do better, faster, more economical, and more efficient. So you got to take that whole time argument out of the picture. And the way that one of the ways that we did that I have found helpful to talk about is we encourage everybody to kind of map your current, workflow. And
Mm,
if you plot that out, surprise, it looks like a bell curve. And there's things on the right of that, the far right of that bell curve, that create a lot of value. Unfortunately, you don't get to spend a whole lot of time on it, but boy, it creates value. You're excited about it. That's the kind of stuff, you go home telling your spouse and your kids about, so that, I got to work on that today, and that was good. And then there's a lot of stuff in the middle that turns out to be where you spend most of your time, that
mhm.
creates a decent amount of value. You can see why it's got to be done. It's very important to be done for the business. You're probably got the skills and ability to do it, so you spend your time there. So, that's good. And then you got the stuff on the left part of that curve that, when you get right down there, you say, this doesn't really create a whole lot of value. I don't like doing this. I'm not even sure why I'm doing this. And
Busy
and and
work. I
yeah,
think we call that
exactly.
busy
That's
work.
that's exactly right. So you got that plotted and you got that mindset. Well, I can come in and tell you about all the great new technology and all the great stuff and the great support we have from senior leadership, but I can't put hours on your day. The only thing that I can encourage you to do is you kind of make that side of that curve go away. And so and we had this set of work processes that were called value creation events. It's really, lean manufacturing, kind of
Hmm.
Six Sigma type stuff, where you look at those things that you're doing, that busy work. Does it need to even be done at all? I mean, we had lots of cases where we had people taking measurements and spending time on stuff that a sensor was already doing.
Oh, wow.
Why are we even doing that? Or you could say, wow, this is a highly inefficient work process. Can we
Mhm.
make a change to this work process and free up time? Maybe you could say, hey, this is left of your curve, but it would be right of someone else's curve. Maybe you're just the
Mhm.
wrong person doing it, if you look at an opportunity cost standpoint. So you go through this whole effort and you say that there's a chunk of that overall curve, and we found it. We've done thousands of these value creation events, and anywhere from 20 to 30% of a team or an individual's work really can be stopped or relatively easily streamlined and optimized. And so we talked about, you draw that first curve, and you draw that in the color red, and that your existing job is the red curve. And then you spread out to the right where there's higher value, and you draw another curve. That's your green curve. And we say, all right, we're going to make changes that affect, you know, 20%, 30% of that, stuff, that busy work, as you call it. and we're going to say we're not going to do that anymore. Well, that frees up 20% or 30% of your time. That's the green curve. That's the curve you drew on the right that has all those things that, that other part of the curve on the right that creates more value and you like to do. Now go work on your green curve. And what that could be is that could be a new skill that you want to learn. We wanted each person throughout the organization to be so-called working on their green curve. What did they want to do differently? And now they have the time to do it. That's the most important thing. I mean, you can talk
Right.
about this all day, but if you don't make work go away, I don't have the time to work on it. Well, here's a way that you actually have time to work on your green curve.
Right. So just to summarize, Jerry, because you've just covered a lot of ground and it's super interesting. Effectively, what you're saying is that you all had built an organization and a culture that supported people's ability to think about innovation, for lack of better
Hmm.
terms. What you're calling the
Correct.
green curve, I'm
Yep.
effectively thinking about as innovation opportunity, if you
Right.
will.
Right.
Your goal then was to free up, much like Google's 20% time, if
Correct.
you're
Correct.
familiar with it, 20% of somebody's time that shouldn't be spent doing busy work so that they can then spend it applying it to new opportunities, either for them personally that would then also benefit the company, or things that would benefit the company in terms of forward thinking opportunity, things of that sort.
That's exactly right.
So, Jerry, talk to me tactically then. How does that come to life? I mean, I'm imagining a world then where you're having, a weekly one-on-one or a monthly review with an employee. Is this something that you are repeatedly coming back to?
Absolutely.
Hey, Danny, how is your green curve doing?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that becomes then a key role of the supervisor is to have those conversations. I mean, if you're not asking your people, you're not, setting the expectation and then enabling them to grow themselves, to work on their green curve, to change the work itself, then you're not going to be successful. And that's the other key piece. It's not just, well, go tell everybody to work on the green curve. You have to have the organization
Right.
focused on, if I'm a team leader, if I'm a supervisor, that's my role, is to really help my people grow, develop. It's you're a coach and you're helping them develop a new skill. And then one of the other things we did is we publicized the heck out of that. At one of our plants in China, they really got into it. They gave some really nice shirts that were green. And so if
Perfect.
you had developed a new skill and you had created some value, you got a green shirt. And then, I mean, literally when I would come, as the ops leader and go to that site, I'd go out there and there'd be, 20 people with a green shirt on, so I'd say,
Sure.
well,
And it becomes a
tell me
sense
about.
of,
That's exactly right.
yeah, I can imagine it becoming sort of a calling card and a sense of pride and,
That's exactly right.
like a
That's exactly
reward
right.
mechanism.
Yeah, yeah.
Jerry, are people compensated on their achievements as well? I mean,
Right.
I can see the recognition part of it being a value and sort of making me feel good about it.
Mhm.
But, I mean, let's get down to brass
Oh, yeah.
tacks.
Oh,
People go to
absolutely.
work to earn
Yep,
money.
yep, yep.
Do I get promoted based on what I've learned
Absolutely.
in my green
Yep.
time? And
Yep. You would in that case, you'd do a spot bonus. You'd actually literally give somebody, a check for, or a team, and publicize that. Uh, and so lots of examples of that. But most importantly was really that sense of personal growth where people's could take on a whole new career. This guy in his green curve, he really became what we now call XR, mixed reality
Mhm.
developer of content, and that's what he does now. I mean,
Wow.
he doesn't work at that one plant anymore. Now he's actually in a corporate group helping across all of the Coke companies do their advanced learning development, which in not all cases, but in many cases, is some mixture of AR and VR. So I mean, that's just one example, but there's a lot of examples like that where people, were able to develop their, something they were interested in, a skill they had. The term that was used corporately is it comes from Maslow, self-actualize. That
Hmm.
I was so interested in doing something, and I had this initiative. I self-actualized to this new skill, and that becomes a new job. Yeah,
If
you
you're
you
familiar,
gotta,
Jerry, we call that
yeah.
manifesting.
Well, there you go. Okay, very good. Yeah, yeah. How am I manifesting today? Well, and there is some reality. You can say, well, hey, I've self-actualized. I want to be a cookie baker. It's like,
Right.
well, that's good, but I'm not sure how that
I don't know if
creates
you'll learn
value.
that here, but
Right,
sure.
or how that creates value for the organization. So I mean, you got to strike that balance. and in many cases, you can say, well, it's not moving as fast as people would like to move. But I think, organizationally, knowing that you have a learning organization, you're really trying to institutionalize a learning organization that is highly motivating to people.
Yeah.
And if you're not motivated by that, well, then maybe you should go do something else because, it doesn't sound like you're too excited to get out of bed in the morning.
No, and it's well documented that that is highly empowering, and I believe it goes back to the Toyota manufacturing process and the
Hmm.
growth of that, where they were very careful to ensure that people felt like they had opportunity for personal growth and personal learning because it made them that much more productive as well. So there's definitely research that backs exactly what you're describing. So
Absolutely.
that's fantastic. It sounds like a really inspiring work environment, to be
Hmm.
honest.
Hmm.
And it's not often that I say that. So, Jerry, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure you and I could keep going for hours on this given the opportunity. But thank you so much for joining me. If folks want to get connected or pick your brain at all, are you open to it? And if so, where can they
Oh,
find you?
sure. Absolutely. LinkedIn's the best place to start with. But yeah, and, as I say, I'm retired now, but I certainly want to stay engaged in this whole technology space. I'm at the fortunate part of my career where it's not about making money. It's hopefully, helping people create value, helping them self-actualize. And I get excited by that as well.
Jerry, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, really enjoy the insights that you've shared. So, thank you.
Same here, Danny. Appreciate it. Take care.
That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in to Innovate, Disrupt, or Die, the podcast. Join us again for our next episode, and don't forget to subscribe at innovatedisruptordie.com. That's all, folks.